Record to record. Awesome. People are filing in. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We'll give everybody a quick second to get in.
Luckily, Natalie, you set up enough chairs for everybody.
Yeah. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I was worried that I wouldn't have enough.
It was going to be standing room only.
Yeah. Like, this is the tough thing about Zoom, man. Like, you never know. All right. Okay. All right. Well, so while we have everybody in their seats and people are filing in, I just want to say hello, everyone. I'm Nat. I wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone, including especially our panelists, for joining us for this RoberCon mini event. Since we can't meet for our annual weekend extravaganza yet in September this year, the RoberCon team and the Roberson Museum and Science Center will be working to create more mini meetups and events like this one, because community and connection is really, really important in times like these. So I just want to make sure that everybody checks out RoberCon and roberson.org for more mini events in person and online. And I will toss it over to you, Chris.
That was great. Thanks, Nat. Thanks for letting us do this. Thanks for agreeing to some shenanigans. In the meanwhile, since we can't have the real convention this year, hopefully this will be a good substitute, I think. All right, let's introduce the panel. I'm Chris Kocher. I'm the programming co-chair for RoberCon, and I'm sure you're all in a different order than me. I don't know. Nate.
Oh, I'm Nate Solloway, comics nerd and lover of all things MCU.
All right, awesome. Adrienne.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Wise, and I live in Northeast Ohio, and I'm a huge MCU movie fan. I'm not, you're going to find out I'm not so well versed in the comics, but I still love the movies and the TV shows, so happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, Jarvis.
Hello, my name is Jarvis Sheffield. I'm the coordinator of the media centers with Tennessee State University. I also am the diversity track director with DragonCon, and I'm the creator of BlackScienceFictionSociety.com, and just all around nerd and comic book lover and lover of science fiction.
And also Nebula Award winner this year.
Actually,
nice.
Close. It closes the Kate Wilhelm Solstice Award.
Right, correct.
I'm one of the recipients this year. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very nice.
Thank you.
Very cool. All right, Jan.
Hi, I'm Jan Fennick. I am a long time, like since I was Marvel fan. I used to watch the way back when in the Dark Ages, there used to be a Marvel animated series, which you can actually find on YouTube. I think it's called the Merry Marvel something or hour. The animation is terrible, but I grew up on that. I can still sing all the theme songs of all the original Avengers there.
Wow.
Read the comics as a kid, got out of it, got back into it in college, kind of got out of it again, and then the MCU basically sucked me back in. Longtime science fiction nerd, fantasy nerd, writer, all sorts of pop culture stuff, and also lover of the TV series. So the Marvel TV series, so we're good.
All right, great. All right, thank you. I appreciate y'all being here, and let's kick off the discussion. Lots to talk about the first TV show officially in the MCU. But that wasn't necessarily the plan, as I remember. The plan was to start with what was the show they wanted to start with?
The Falcon and Winter Soldier.
All right.
But we were also supposed to have gotten Black Widow and Shang-Chi and the Eternals in the theater, and then we were supposed to get Falcon and Winter Soldier last August. So this WandaVision was supposed to start about when it did, but it was not supposed to be kicking off an entire year-long drought of no Marvel after Endgame.
Right. Okay. So what? But we ended up WandaVision came first. What do we think? Was that a good? Did that turn out well? How did that turn out? To do that one first.
I think it turned out pretty well. it was executed completely different from most shows that are out here. But I think a lot of the contention of coming from certain people were because we're simply not used to watching episodic TV anymore. We're used to binge watching everything. So I think we had to be reacquainted with the episodic mythology of how WandaVision was deployed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was an excellent first Marvel show because, I mean, what could be better than having a show that is a love letter to shows? Because that's pretty much what it is. I mean, to sitcoms. So.
True.
I think for me, it was great because I think it came in at a time where everybody was just desperate for new TV and new stuff. And like I said, it's been a year-long drought since we had anything, or actually 2 years now, because Endgame, I think, was 2 years or will be 2 years in May. But I think a lot of MCU fans, especially the more casual ones, were like, it took them really by surprise because they were expecting the usual blow up stuff, beat 'em up stuff, normal, earthbound superhero stuff. And suddenly you were getting, wait, what is this? What is this vintage? I mean, especially the first couple of episodes, I saw a lot of complaints from other people. I loved it because I grew up on sitcoms also, but they couldn't understand what was going on and why aren't things being blown up and what's happening and where are the Avengers. And so I think it was kind of a sneak attack. It really took people by surprise. But on the other hand, I know a lot of people who weren't into the MCU who sort of heard about it and got intrigued and wound up watching it, didn't know a thing about what had happened before, but they absolutely loved it because they just got into the characters in the story and what was going on. So it was kind of a cool mystery. So
I think it was perfect timing with the pandemic. I got to be honest. I mean, this has been a year where we've bonded around what's on our screens, right? Like Tiger King was only a year ago, right? Where we were all like, holy crap, we're locked up, but we're all watching the same thing. And then we had this appointment TV show, and Jan, you were told it was very accessible for anybody. It was not a superhero origin story. It was this weird self-contained thing that you could just get dropped right into, and they fed you everything you need, but it was mystery like Twin Peaks. It had crazy episodic stuff and experimentation that we just have come to love in this golden age of TV. I think I'm actually really glad Falcon and Winter Soldier is coming after, because that's going to be more standard, probably action, spy thriller, superhero fare. And this just was genre bending, which is exactly what Feige and the rest of the MCU brain trust have been doing to us, right? It's like, hey, yeah, you like superheroes, let's drop them into something completely different that you didn't realize we can make a story in this genre with these types of characters.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it because you literally did not know what was going to happen next. And I mean, like you were talking about, Jarvis, I mean, I think this is a perfect example of why you need to have weekly episodes. I mean, I don't know, since The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, this has been the most talked about pop culture phenomenon, I think, because people go back to it week after week and the momentum kept building up because you didn't know what was going to happen and you wanted to show up every week. I didn't show up at midnight every week. If I was actually up, I probably would have watched it. But okay, Jan did. But
yeah, I'm crazy.
I got excited every Friday waiting to see what was going to happen, and that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, it's interesting because I follow a lot of conversations on the internet, and a lot of people, especially younger people, were very unhappy that they didn't get to binge watch it and that it wasn't dropped all at once because they couldn't deal with having to be patient and having to wait from one week to the next. And actually, but to me, I think it was brilliant. I mean, aside from the actual number, dollars and cents point of Disney wanting people to stay and continue to subscribe, so they had to stay on because if you want to know what happened, you have to be there next week. It really gave people an entire week to sit, digest, analyze, maybe overanalyze, pick it apart and speculate. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was the kind of stuff that we were doing with Game of Thrones that we'd done back in the days with Twin Peaks. There was a lot of, there were so many different layers. And also for friends of mine who didn't really know the MCU, I was able to explain or give them background or say, you know what, watch this or see this because that'll explain this thing that you didn't understand. Or, in the comics, this is what happened, but I don't know what's going to happen, but this is where they're drawing it from. So it gave people time to actually sit and, especially when we're locked in our homes. I know everybody wants instant gratification right now, but it was really nice. And the same thing with Mandalorian. It's very nice to actually be able to connect with people and talk to people and figure out what's going on, but that just because, and also, like I said, I was getting up at 3 in the morning and watching it because I didn't want to be spoiled, because literally
Right.
the episode would end, or if, like, I think the first week my internet wasn't Disney Plus wasn't working. I couldn't get the story on. So other people were like 10, 15, 30 minutes ahead of me, and they were already dropping spoilers. So for
Oh.
me, in order to like
That's mean.
not be spoiled by stuff, I had to watch it at like 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern time.
I
Which
was
fine, 'cause
literally locking myself out of the internet on
Yeah.
Fridays because my wife and I would watch this with dinner on Friday nights, and I'm like, no Twitter, no Reddit,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to look at Facebook. But it was worth it. It was something we shared together, which, I'm a total 80s comic nerd, and, we watch these things, and I'm constantly giggling at Easter eggs or pulling my handbook of the Marvel Universe off the shelf and flipping through to look something up. My wife doesn't care about any of that. She doesn't want me to explain any of it. She just enjoys every one of these things with what's being presented. And this was an excellent example of a mysterious show, characters people know nothing about, and yet my wonderful wife, who knows nothing about any of these characters beyond what she's seen in these movies so far, was totally into it and enjoying herself as much as I was with my knowledge of what happened in the 80s comics and the nutty stuff,
which is really great. I mean, like, I knew the comics. I had not read the Tom King The Vision, but I knew about what happened in that one. So it was like there were elements of everything in there, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't just a direct adaptation of this story or that story, or because the MCU is a different universe, so a different part of the multiverse. We're getting something different. And to me, also, just all the sitcom stuff. I was watching the making of last night, and the level of detail and level of craftsmanship that was just going in between hair, makeup, the cameras, the lenses, the lighting. It just like blew me away, because like I said, I love vintage sitcoms also. So I was just seeing all these little touches was great, because they really were immersing themselves and the audience into what was going on.
And I watched that today, and they said they even talked to Dick Van Dyke to see how the Dick Van Dyke show was recorded, because they wanted it to be that authentic, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, they had talked about that earlier, because the fact that Dick Van Dyke was also an alum of Disney from
Mary Poppins,
They
Chitty
were
Chitty
able-
Bang Bang.
There were people at Disney who actually had connection to him, and that's how they were able to sit down and have lunch with him. Because otherwise, they might have been able to do it, and he might not have responded. But this way, they actually used the Disney connection.
I even ended up finding a new show through this show, which I had never watched, Happy Endings, which was a Russo brothers produced sitcom. It's on Hulu, 3 seasons on Hulu. And that is what was, my wife had apparently watched it, and that's what was directly referenced in one of the openings in one of the later episodes. And she's like, "Oh, we got so much. We're now almost completely through binge watching that. Discover, and able to refer back now to what was being referred to in there, not just the 50s stuff."
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, I have to start watching Malcolm in the Middle, because the 90s episode was all Malcolm in the Middle, and people were like referencing that. And I've seen like 3 episodes. I'm like, okay, now I have to go back and watch that and see what was being pulled from there.
I think one of the main things that I pulled from this series, which was stated already, was that it was completely unpredictable. You had no idea what was going to be on the screen when you tuned in that night, because and also stated before, they pulled little bits and pieces from all the different iterations of the comics, and I thought that was masterfully done. So. And also, I didn't want to get caught. I wanted to make sure that I saw every episode as soon as possible, because otherwise you were going to get spoiled. They're going to drop them, and you're going to be like, "Oh man, I want to see that for myself."
So, question from the chat is, for those of you who were really familiar with the comics, how much did the actual show parallel some of the things in the comics, and did knowing those storylines make it more enjoyable for you? I mean, were you able to spot some of the references maybe others of us, such as me or Adrienne, who are less familiar with the comics, might not have gotten?
I as a kid who bought the original Vision and Scarlet Witch and West Coast Avengers books that the storylines were based on off the shelf as they came out, going to Safeway and buying them there, there are references, but it is not a parallel story by any stretch of the imagination. There's character names that they borrow. Agatha Harkness as a character she's a completely different character in this show than she has been coming up through the Marvel universe that, you know, burned at the stake, Salem witch trials, stuff like that happened, but completely differently. Magically created children by Wanda that are her and Vision's children, totally in there, and then going away at some point, yes, totally in there as well. But man, you did not need to know first off, the comics are terrible, by the way. If you feel a need to go back and reread them, like a lot of Bronze Age, feel free to do it, but you're not going to enjoy it. Okay, I'll tell you flat out.
You haven't read them.
Yeah, but but they did take, you know, it's the pieces they borrowed, right? But they also borrowed pieces that have already been used. The book, the Darkhold book, has already been used in 2 other Marvel TV shows that sort of get to tie into
They
MCU.
did Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and what else?
Yep.
Yeah, it was in, and what was the other? Oh, and the one that was on the Runaways show that was on
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
I haven't seen
for
that
like
one.
2 seconds.
I didn't
flat.
realize that wasn't in there. Oh, it must have been in the last season because I haven't seen that one yet. But
I think it may have been in Ghost Rider as well.
But
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I back in the day in the 80s, I borrowed my friends because I was in college and I had a lot of comic reading friends. So I got really into like X-Men, but my other friends like bought everything. So I would borrow my friends and just read through their stuff. So I sort of remembered it. So like, I think people who knew it, a lot of people were able to guess that Agnes was Agatha Harkness because, you know, just sort of a portmanteau of her name, but she operated very differently. And the whole sitcom genre just changed everything because that was not in any of the comics. I mean, the fact that Wanda has chaos magic and Wanda was able to bend reality is something that's there. That's her main power. So it was nice to see that, but a lot of the story elements were different, or they sort of picked them up, you know, cherry picked what they wanted, threw it in a blender, and then poured it out, and it was something entirely different. Even the same thing with the kids. I mean, some of us knew the kids were coming because the kids had been cast, and there were some sides that got it leaked, but you know, the way that they disappeared and what's going on with them and where they are now, we don't know. But I'm guessing they're coming back because there are a lot of hints over all the shows that they're at some point in the future we're going to get Young Avengers, and Billy and Tommy are part of the Young Avengers. So I'm hoping we will eventually see them, but right now they're still 10 years old. So and obviously the last scene is giving us hints that we will probably see them in some form at some point.
and that she might use the Darkhold to create them again.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they weren't completely dissipated. They're somewhere in some form, but we don't know what, somewhere in the multiverse. And that obviously is going to lead into Multiverse of Madness.
Right, and then also Vision goes on to get a new family, a robotic family as well. So it gets really interesting.
Yeah, they borrowed, I was saying before, that's part of the Tom King run where Vision is actually, he builds himself a synthesoid wife and synthesoid children, and hilarity and all sorts of bizarre stuff happens after that. And but the whole Vision in the suburbs is actually a little bit of this series too. I know Feige has talked about that, but it's very different. I'm hoping we will actually see the daughter Viv at some point, because America Chavez is showing up in Multiverse of Madness, and she's actually, I guess, Viv's girlfriend somewhere in the future in the book. So like I said, I think they're getting us towards Young Avengers, but it may not be for another 5-10 years.
They're laying the groundwork in the Hawkeye. We're getting the characters in the Hawkeye series. There's a Secret Wars series which lays the groundwork for Hulkling to show up. These are all nerd characters. These are all deep cut nerd characters that all
Cassie Lang and Ant-Man that just aged her up, which means they're going to want to go to Stature, etc. So yeah, they're laying groundwork for that stuff. But who knows when? Feige has a plan. We don't know it.
What I really loved about this, by the way, though, but if you want to take what is important from the comics that they brought into this was a Wanda story. Okay, Wanda's thing has always been, from the days when they retconned it so that she was brainwashed to be one of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and then eventually she becomes one of the kooky quartet of Cap's Avengers, along with her brother, becomes a hero. But her story is always rooted in a bit of tragedy. Always. And she makes a lot of mistakes. She does a lot of in current X-Men comics, she's considered one of the greatest enemies of all time because of some things she's done. She committed genocide against mutants in the comics at one point, almost wiping them off the face of the planet. So she's hated by them now. She's always had these struggles in her character throughout her entire 50-year history or so. And they really brought it in what, 8 episodes? They took us through this trauma and this the complexity, which we did not get any of that. you never got any of that in the few minutes we got to spend with her, like even in Avengers Endgame morning vision, you know?
Well, that's part of what the game plan is now, at least with the Disney Plus series, is that they really want to take characters that weren't forefront because they weren't the OG Avengers, they weren't this character or that character, and build them up and give them backstory. I mean, I'm hearing today was the end of the embargo for Falcon and Winter Soldier, at least on social media. So a lot of people had said they saw the first episode, and same thing where you're getting background, you're getting backstory, you're suddenly finding out about these people that have been on the screen for 10 years now. Give or take, but we didn't really know because they weren't Cap, they weren't Tony, they weren't Thor or whoever. So now we're really getting more about them. And I just noticed in the chat that somebody had mentioned about Wanda, and it ties in what we were saying. The series, I don't think, I mean, some people, I've seen the argument, and it's also was brought up in chat, that Wanda somehow got off scot-free and she's, you know, this hero and has no consequences. And I think that's totally wrong. When she left, you know, she had the discussion with Monica. Monica let her go. But those townspeople, and even Hayward to some point, were looking at her, and she's not getting off scot-free. And I think the other thing that they're sort of planting the seeds for is the whole anti-superhero, which then becomes later in the X-Men, the anti-mutant attitudes of normal people out there. So I think that we're getting a lot of groundwork laid up, and Wanda's not just going to come back and be, you know, the equivalent of Superman or Wonder Woman, where everybody's going to love her and everything is going to be hunky-dory and everybody's going to forget. This is something that's going to be held against her. That's the whole point of the Accords also. We saw that as far back as Civil War, that, you know, superpowered beings doing things that are hurting people, not helping people, and everybody forgets that they got rid of this enemy, or they got rid of Thanos, or, you know, brought back half the population because there's personal grievances too. And that's not wrong. I mean, the beauty of Marvel to me always has been, as compared to DC, is their characters have flaws, their characters have issues, their characters are not one-dimensional, you know, goody-goody. Even Cap, who is probably the closest thing to a Boy Scout we have, still has flaws, and there's still things they do right and do wrong. So I think one is going to be in a very precarious position in future. We don't even know if she's going to be an antagonist or a protagonist in Multiverse of Madness.
I think there's a big possibility she's being set up as a big bad here. Yeah. I got to be, and in which we can empathize with. I mean, we can still empathize. You know, this show, I'm talking too much, so I'll shut up. But I mean, this show took us through her grief and her imperfections, and she ended up doing things. And now, you know, we're getting Baron Zemo coming up in the next TV series that's coming up, which we know, you know, we're getting a lot of good villains. We don't know where she's going. She's the Scarlet Witch. She's not save the world superhero at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we're sometime probably in the next 2-3 years, we're getting Fantastic Four, which means that we're going to get Victor Von Doom. And Victor is somebody who uses technology and magic and is a megalomaniac. And, you know, you don't know who's going to, you know, this is Marvel. There are people, there are characters who've always liked flip sides, like Magneto, who's been good, he's been bad, he's a misunderstood villain. I think that Wanda could very easily be one of the other, because she is a gray area. She's an entity unto herself. And now she's basically the most superpowered being that we know of so far in Marvel canon. I mean, because we haven't gotten people like Galactus or, you know, Doom or whomever. But yeah, it's not going to be cut and dried, because this is Marvel. They don't do that.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was good, that we're getting to see a different character, not the same characters that are being reiterated over and over and over and over. So seeing some of the other characters is really refreshing for me.
I mean, this is, I mean, I feel like we're experiencing what the thunderbolt that was when Marvel Comics came along, right? And gave this alternative street level, these are the heroes outside your window. When Stan Lee and Jack Kirby started creating this stuff, Kevin Feige and his brain trust are doing this to us with these movies. And it's just really impressive. I feel like I could, even though it's superpowers and a witch who took over a town and everything else, I almost could look out my window out here and see them walking down the street. And I don't get that from you know, the DC movies or others.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I'm in New York. I like, you know, can I, you know, drive over the bridge and go to New Jersey and look for, you know, Westview at this point. It's, you know, and also Marvel's very New York based. So, you know, when I see Spider-Man or whatever, the Spider-Man films, it just makes me laugh when I actually recognize, you know, either an actual locale or something that's dressed up to look like an actual locale. So,
well, they actually filmed a lot of things in Cleveland, which is near where I live. So that's cool seeing the same kind of thing. Well, because the Russo brothers are originally from Northeast Ohio.
They actually, a couple of, I think last week or in the recent past, the Russos actually posted a whole thing on Instagram where they were showing like bits of Cleveland and friends and people that they know. So check that out. But yeah, it's very, and I have friends who are actually in the Atlanta area, so they recognize all the Atlanta stuff. There's a shot of from Loki that's coming up where there's an elevator, and it's one of the elevators in the Marriott that they use for Dragon Con. So it's like,
Oh, weird.
yeah, in the future, I'm like,
saw
I've been
that.
there for convention. I'm like, oh my God, I know that elevator. And, all my Dragon Con friends were freaking out over it. So yeah, that's always nice too, that it's much more real world based than DC, where, you've got Gotham or you've got, Metropolis or this and that, where it's sort of, yeah, it's sort of the city, but it's not. But
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, one of the other interesting things to me was that you saw, what was happening outside of Westview as well. I mean, we kind of get a better view of sort of society after the reversal of the snap and everybody comes back. And, sometimes that was a good thing. Sometimes it maybe wasn't a great thing, but we had all of those characters, almost in their own separate show, while everything else was happening in Westview, right?
yeah, I mean, I know there were people who didn't like Hayward because they felt that he was too sort of a cut and dried, oh, I don't like this stuff villain. Which, I mean, I think through 8 episodes and somebody brand new, it was kind of hard to build him up. But he was also the voice of a lot of normal people who went through that snap. And that argument that he had with Monica about, well, you just came back. You don't know what it was like for us for these 5 years. We don't know, because in Endgame, we got basically just a time jump. And we sort of got a glimpse of what it was like, in that time, but we didn't spend the 5 years and know what was going on with your ordinary people. And even Far From Home kind of glossed over it and kind of did a ha-ha. And, all these people that were in high school now are all grown up, and aren't they hot now? But I think that's another thing that the MCU is going to be starting to do now, is giving us some idea of what happened. And it's a whole new landscape, and it's something very different. And again, I think that ties in with the sort of the normal people getting very angry at superheroes, as if they were somehow, it's all their fault that the snap happened. So,
And we get Jimmy Woo,
yay!
who is just, who, by the way, is a comic book character that predates every other character on this show. He was a Marvel comic book character before Marvel Comics existed in the Timely Comics days in the 1950s as a secret agent. So yeah, so for we love Jimmy. We love that. He's not just an Easter egg. He's actually an awesome character in his own right that we got a little bit in Ant-Man, and now we're hoping to see break out.
In the comics, he's like Asian James Bond. So I mean, the fact that they've changed him to sort of this very earnest, very like, if anybody's a Boy Scout, I think it's Jimmy. Youth pastor, Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, whatever. But I love the character, and I'm really hoping we're going to see more, and maybe we're going to get Agents of Atlas, especially after Shang-Chi happens. So
I've got some bets with some friends right now on who's going to be the new moral center of the MCU with Cap gone now, and Iron Man out. Who's going to be this? And my bet is either on Jimmy or Shang-Chi, to be honest. And I think we're going to have Asian characters really rising up and moving into the forefront.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Shang-Chi. I think it looks really, really good. And Simu Liu is awesome. So. Yeah, and speaking of sitcoms, if you haven't watched, I just binged it recently. Kim's Convenience, which is on Netflix, is awesome. Unfortunately, it just got canceled. They've got one more season coming, but just phenomenal cast. And Simu Liu, who's the lead in Shang-Chi, is actually one of the major characters on that show. So
when is that coming out? Is that this year, right?
It's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's. I think they're filming.
Summer.
So.
Yeah. Oh, this summer.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see Monica Rambeau making her appearance as this character, and looking forward to hopefully seeing her transform into either Captain Marvel or Spectrum, or
probably Spectrum or Photon, because Photon was her mom's call sign, so I feel you're gonna go with Spectrum. But
so I was really excited to see her.
She was the leader of the Avengers for some of us when we were growing up. I mean, this is she's not a minor character, even though she's been pushed to the back burner on the storylines these days. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely not going to be the case in the next Captain Marvel movie. I think she's going to have a major role in.
Yeah, she and also Kamala Khan, because they're doing Ms. Marvel, which is coming this fall, and I know she's supposed to be in the film too. But I thought Teyonah Parris was absolutely awesome. You see her in interviews; she's such a delightful woman, and she's so excited to be doing what she's doing that I'm so looking forward to seeing where she goes from here.
Yeah, I loved that part where she goes through into the hex and you see all of her different versions coming out from when she's a little girl and from Captain Marvel into where she is now. That was one of the coolest special effects, I think, from the whole season.
Cool.
All right, so while we're talking about favorites, do you have favorite scenes, characters, episodes? Let's go around and just start with Jarvis.
Oh, I think the very last one. I think they built. That was my favorite. The very last episode because we had this tremendous build up, and that was just the ultimate fight between Vision and himself, and Agatha and Wanda. It was exquisite. I was just on the edge of my seat, like, okay, let's hurry up, get through this commercial so we can get back to some of this action. But I think that was my favorite, just because we had waited so long for it, and the wait was well worth it.
Mm-hmm. How about Jan? You got any favorite episodes or
But
scenes?
probably my favorite episodes, just because for the nostalgia's sake, are probably episode 2 and episode 3. Because again, I grew up, I mean, I was born in '63, so I grew up on Dick Van Dyke and Bewitched and the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch and all that. And just inside, a friend of mine actually worked on set design. So he helped build the episode 2, episode 3 house, which he was evil because he's under NDAs and stuff. So he told me he was on the show, but wouldn't tell me what he was doing. And I would get like, you know, DM saying, "Oh, if you only you could, I wish you could see what I'm working on now. It's so cool. Oh, wait, I can't tell you."
Dirk.
Yeah. Yeah, he also worked on the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I have no idea what he did on there at all. I'll find out soon enough. But from the nostalgic factor, character-wise, I love Agatha. I've always been a fan of Catherine Hahn back from like her Crossing Jordan days, and she's a university alum of mine, but she was there after I was. And I just think she's great because the fact that just watching the levels of her acting going on there, but everybody was great. I mean, there's nobody I didn't like, so I'm just kind of like, give me the whole thing and just inject it right into my veins. So.
Nice. Adrienne, you got any particular episodes, characters, scenes, things that you really loved?
I really loved the theme songs. I thought they were fantastic because it was the couple that did the songs for Frozen, so they obviously went with the best. But it was so evocative. The one with the episode that was the 80s, it sounded so much like, Family Ties or Growing Pains. It brought me back to my childhood. So they were all spot on. I really loved the 60s one. It was just the Brady Bunch kind of style, and it was fantastic.
Cool. Nate?
I mean, the original references to everything Dick Van Dyke Show. I mean, here's my background. I mean, when I was a kid, that was the show. That was the black and white comedy show in syndication that I just latched into. It was written by Carl Reiner. It had Dick Van Dyke. It was really subversive about men and women and their experiences in the world. And the way this show latched onto it, I just, of all the sitcom references, that was the one I was just dying into. And if you go back and watch the episodes that they actually reference in the TV show, it's some really weird reality bending stuff where Rob Petrie, the character, is having nightmares after watching a horror movie. And so he thinks he's experiencing reality, but it's actually his own nightmare that he's living in. And that was done in a black and white sitcom when we only had 3 channels on the air. I mean, it's crazy.
And the only thing it was missing was Danny Thomas, which, because Danny Thomas, who's actually one of the producers of the Dick Van Dyke Show, shows up in the episode that's referenced, and he's actually the bad guy, the evil alien who's like controlling all this stuff until he wakes up. But so it's like a running joke that he's involved with it too. So. But there was no Danny Thomas in this.
Right?
It's the Pleasantville reference out of all those different shows. I thought that when I saw it, I was like, oh, I know exactly where that's from. It was black and white. And
right,
then
where they
start turning the color.
Yep. Where they had the drone sitting in the bush, and it was sitting there, and then the blood on her hand where it was red, and that was so cool.
Oh yeah.
I really love the sitcom stuff too. I mean, I grew up with all that stuff. I used to live out in the middle of nowhere, so I'd spend a lot of time watching Nick at Night back in the day, and watching all the old Dragnet episodes and everything else that was on at that hour. So yeah, that was really fun for me.
Well,
From-
I was watching that special that we were talking about earlier that came out today, and they were saying that there are actually some Twilight Zone kind of vibes also that they built into it, which I thought was really cool. I mean, the guy kind of almost choking in the first episode and them just standing there is kind of, because that was your first hint that things were slightly off. And it was just, I thought that was really cool that they kind of had that going through all the episodes as well.
In the Q&A, somebody says, what are the panelists' thoughts or speculations about the Quicksilver Ralph Boehner casting that turned out to be not what people expected it to be?
I loved
Best
it.
red herring.
I loved it. People were freaking out, and they're still freaking out. And now it's like, this was the worst series ever because they didn't give me Quicksilver. I thought it was just the funniest thing because it was referencing back to things like, you know, the switching of the Darrens, and also even later on Roseanne, where they mocked it, where Becky, the actress who played Becky, was changed several times. And this happened a lot. And nobody ever said, like, gosh, you look different, or, oh, it's a totally different character. And it was also even throwback to soap operas, where at least they usually did the theater thing.
Right.
The role of this character is now going to be played by da-da-da-da going forward. So I just thought that was really funny. It was very meta that they used Evan Peters, who's a great actor. It sounds like they actually had shot a scene that didn't get in there, where Ralph and Monica and the kids were supposed to be in the basement trying to get the Darkhold, and Senior Scratchy the rabbit turned into a demon, but I guess they didn't get the visual effects done. And I'm hoping we'll get like either an extended edition or just extras, you know, like you would get on a DVD set to see it, even if the vis effects aren't done. But I thought he was great. And, you know, I know a lot of people are upset, but there's something still weird about him. I'm not taking everything they're saying about him completely, you know, 100%, because the fact that he had a headshot of himself with his name seemed odd. So, I mean, I don't know whether he's going to show up because we still don't know who Jimmy's witness protection person is either. So it might be something there, it might not. But I just loved it because I love Evan Peters. And like I said, I know a lot of people were disappointed. They wanted the multiverse of other characters coming in, this and that, but I loved it. I just thought it was the funniest thing, and it was really well done. And they just
Jan, you don't have headshots of yourself that you just like, that's out.
No, and I need them for books and things, but I don't even have them. So it's just when he picked up when she picked up the bill, I could get it, but then he picked up that, like, it was a younger photo. It was like a headshot, and it's like, also we might have gotten more about him because I know that the COVID break actually like changed things around. They weren't able to do exactly what they wanted to. Like Darcy was supposed to have more to do in the finale, but couldn't because they couldn't get Kat Dennings back to finish shooting, which is why she's just got the one line. But I just thought it was great, but I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that.
But this is the genius of the show. I mean, this show is postmodernism, right? I mean, it's self-referential. It refers to other works. It turns around and winks at the audience and gives you, you don't have to do homework, but at the same time, they give you a little bit of, you want to know something? You can get something, you can dig in and get a little bit more, but you don't have to have it. And I, for one, was so delighted Evan Peters showed up, and even more excited when it didn't turn into something bigger, because this was Wanda's story. And it's really, I'm going to say it's misogynistic. There's a whole misogynistic section of the internet that wanted Wanda's story to be all about delivering Reed Richards and Wolverine to them. You know what I mean? And instead, let's get to have a story about a woman and her grief and let that be all it is. And I love the fact that they let it breathe and just be the thing.
Yeah, I thought that was very provocative of them to do that with that particular character. Then also, there may be some other things down the line because they're really good at foreshadowing. And so that may be something that we'll see again in one of the upcoming series or movies.
Yeah, I mean, if we wind up getting Evan Peters as somebody else later on down the line, I'd love it. If this actually is a one-off, that's good too, because I think he was having a ball for himself. And like I said, it was just a wink and a nod. I mean, there were people who were unhappy about it. And I think part of it is the misogyny, where people wanted Quicksilver and they suddenly wanted it to be all about him. I mean, I like Quicksilver as a character. I'd love to see him in the MCU. I'm sorry he got killed off in Age of Ultron so quickly, but that was because of the Fox thing. But on the other hand, we could do something else. I'm not too worried about it yet. And hopefully we'll have speed, so we will have a speedster. So.
All right, Nancy in the chat says, can we talk about how awesome Darcy is in this show? So I'm just gonna
Yay!
put that out for you.
Also, hi,
Nancy
Nancy.
fans.
I love her.
Yeah,
She's my favorite.
yeah. It
She's
was
the
so
best
nice.
part of Thor 2.
Oh,
love-
yeah.
I will
That
fight
is,
you on that. I
considering
love
how
Thor
bad that
2.
movie. You like
Gotta
Thor
have your-
2?
I love
gotta
that
have your
film, and I
nerds.
will die on that hill.
You're the only one.
Nancy's with me, and I know that because she's my pal. No, I mean, it has its flaws, and I can see it. I mean, Christopher Eccleston was totally wasted in it, but I still like it because I think there's a lot of good character moments. And one of the things is Darcy and Ian and Darcy and Eric, and it was great to see her again. And I love the fact that she went from being a political science major who was just somebody's intern to now she's like Dr. Darcy Lewis, which is also in the 5 years I guess she survived the snap and went back and became an astrophysicist. So how cool is that? So.
I hope she shows up in the new Thor movie. She said that she wasn't going to be in it, but that doesn't mean anything.
Jarvis, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, you got to have your super nerds in the show, your supportive cast that just don't rely on powers, but just their personality and their wit. So that was a great addition to the show.
I mean, putting her and Jimmy together was magical. When they're kind of like the B story, but they're still very memorable and very enjoyable to watch.
It really does. It continues the Marvel tradition of if you're a scientist in any Marvel universe, no matter what the medium, you're an expert in everything. You can walk through a door and be like, hand me that oscilloscope and I'll connect it to this ray gun and I will turn it, I will build a video game system out of it. If you're a scientist, you can also, you can do medical stuff too. She's embodying that wonderfully.
Yeah, and I love the fact she just came in, with the other science experts, and they all disappeared. We never heard or saw from them again. Where she took over everything and was able to solve like 90% of what was going on. Because she's Darcy and she's awesome. And Kat Dennings is just really good. I mean, and I'm hoping that we both get her and Jimmy, even if it's not with the properties they started out in. I'd like to see Darcy show up in another TV show or show up in somebody else's film. I mean, that's the thing about Marvel that's nice is you've got all these moving parts. And we don't have to go with this person only shows up with that person. I mean, I'm glad we're getting Jane back in Love and Thunder because I'm a big Jane Foster fan also. But if Jane had shown up with somebody else who's suddenly needing an astrophysicist, that would be cool. We've got enough background in the MCU now. I think everybody can kind of be like mix and match if they're sort of. That's the way the comics work too. Where you have random characters from somebody else's book showing up in this city or this time doing this thing because it works for the story.
And I just want to say, anytime you can show smart young women in STEM fields, whether it's Darcy, whether it's Osgood and Doctor Who, any many other examples, I'm sure I could.
Well, and Monica also.
What's that?
Monica also.
True. All of those. Is always a great thing to see. It's always a great role model for any of the young girls who are watching to realize that it's not just a guy thing to be smart in that way.
That's one of the reasons I'm a Jane Foster fan. I mean, one of my favorite characters all the way through since I was very small was Thor, but back in the day, Jane was like a simpering, nurse / girlfriend, female, hanger-on type thing and didn't do anything with the story. But we got the first Thor movie and she suddenly showed up and she was an astrophysicist and she was doing stuff. I loved it. And that's one of the reasons I do actually like Thor 2 is that they said flaws and all, she's still doing her job. She's still being like a kick-ass astrophysicist and dealing with anomalies. And she's not just, sitting on the sideline going, oh, save me. So yeah, I think Marvel's doing a good job with that now. I think they're really trying to push diversity and push strong women, which is something the comics have always had. There's actually also a really good piece, I think it's called Behind the Mask, it's on Disney Plus, and it's all about the Marvel comic universe and kind of diversity and how things change and going back and looking even at the mistakes they made back in the day, early days, and how they've course corrected and what they're trying to do now. So it's very good because it's just talking about the entire like socio-political history of the Marvel universe. So I'd highly recommend that, just a standalone thing. And because that's why we have characters like Kamala Khan coming in now. We've got, a Muslim Pakistani American growing up in Jersey City who becomes a superhero, and she fangirls Captain Marvel. and apparently, writes fan fiction, or at least she's going to in the TV series. So it's great. We're getting second, third generation of characters now, and we're getting different viewpoints of view, which is what we should have.
All right, we sort of talked about this a little bit, but I'll bring it back around. Did you find the finale satisfying? And obviously there were auxiliary point. There were many people online who had many other ideas about how it should turn out. So A, did you enjoy the finale? B, what did we think about the other people who had other much more complicated and nerdier ideas than what actually ended up on the screen?
I just thought it was weird when the two visions were talking about Martha, and that stopped the fight. That was odd to me. But
Strange, yeah, I didn't understand that at all.
I understand that reference.
Yeah, thank you. That's my joke for the night. But I mean, so within the context, right? So within the context of anything MCU, nothing ever ends. This is the genius of what they've done, and every other movie and media property, everybody's trying to play catching up with this extended universe, is they've thrown all the toys down and said, it never stops. That's why you have an end credits, something after the end credits. So who cares? Oh, the finale didn't do what I wanted, didn't do what somebody wanted to do. Who cares? There's going to be 70 movies and a bunch of TV shows, and they're all going to do all the things you want. This was its own little thing, and here's where it fits into the pieces, and you can take it or leave it. I loved it. I loved every episode of this series. Left me breathless, and the quiet ending with Wanda really just left me soulfully going, okay, it left me way more interested in her than I'd ever been in this universe. Does that make sense? Right? I was like, I really wanted to see what she was going on there.
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed it. I mean, like I said, I think there were certain loose ends, like Darcy suddenly sort of vanishing, that it's because there were production problems and because we got stuck with COVID and they had to stop the entire production and didn't even know when they were going to get back. So the fact that they were able to put together what they did with what they did, I can overlook that. I mean, it's just like I said, you can sort of go, okay, you can see what happened here. Or, the fact that we never got the basement shot with the two kids, so Ralph kind of disappeared, but maybe there's more to him too. Overall, it did what it had to because it dealt with all the levels of grief and it just Wanda's journey of what she was going through. And my biggest fear, because I love Vision and I actually love the Vision and Wanda love story, and this series really, I'm a romantic, and this series was like heart-wrenching on that level. I was terrified they were going to kill off Vision and that was going to be it. They didn't kill off Vision. We don't know what's going to happen with him, but he's got his memories back. It may be like in the comics where at one point he got his memories back, but had no emotional connection to them, so they broke up. But we still have pieces, we still have characters to play with. There's still toys there. There's still tools there, and we'll see what happens in future. But everybody that I wanted to get through this in one piece got through this in one piece without like completely ripping my heart out and saying I can't watch this anymore because this character, like I love Thor Ragnarok, like I love breathing, but the ending with Thanos' ship shows up after this like glorious happy ending, it kills me every time because it's like, yeah, and then half your population is going to be killed in the next 30 seconds, including Loki. Don't do this to me, Taika. But yeah, overall, I think the storytelling was wonderful. I think the peeling back of it was wonderful, and the ending did everything they needed it to do and wanted to do. And anything that's left hanging either was done on purpose or it was a minor thing that we didn't need to know. And actually, tying with what Nate was saying, the director actually sort of was in an interview today was positive about, well, people on the internet aren't happy because this or that and Quicksilver. And he said, they really need to like remember this is Marvel. We've, Feige said, we've got mutants coming. We've got a multiverse coming. We've got this coming, that coming. They're going to get what they want. It just may not be right away. It's so like they need to just sort of sit down, chill out, and just wait because it is coming. The things they want are coming because it's Marvel. It's constantly building upon itself. It didn't happen here because we were telling a different kind of story, which I think was great because that's what they did. We got something very psychological, very emotional, very much in a way it's very much a woman's story. Also the director was a man, but the main people and the main writers were all women, so I think that's part of it too. This is not the boys, let's bash them up, blow up things, break everything. We got that too, but there was more to it than just kind of your normal this is what boys want, which I don't think is even true. So
right. Jarvis, you said the finale was your favorite.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you
I,
must
I,
have strong feelings on that one.
yeah, like I said, the fight sequences were what you expect for all of the MCU movies, and I mean they were really really great. But I tell people, I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I'm a cheap date in terms of entertainment. I don't every dot doesn't have to be every I doesn't have to have a dot, and the T doesn't have to be crossed. I just want to be entertained, and that's what happened with this whole series. And the beginning was a slow burn, but like I said, the finale was well worth the wait,
Mm-hmm.
and all
Adrienne
the
Wise.
ebbs and flows in between.
Yeah, true. I think people. I think it would have been a very different show if they explained in episode 1, scene 1, exactly what was going on. Like, I think that would have been less interesting. And I think sometimes people want to have the instant answers now. They want to know right now what's going on. And you're like, well, that's not how, if you think about it as a structure of a movie, the whole series as a movie, I mean, that's not really how it works. They don't in scene 1 say, okay, this is what's going on. Sometimes they don't even tell you until the last 15 minutes what's really going on in the movie. So, they at least, episode 4, they're like, all right, well, now we're going to peel back some of the stuff and tell you what's going on. But
Yeah.
I found that part to be a little frustrating.
There are Marvel movies that do that too. That's the dynamic, astounding thing that the MCU does is, do you want a seat of your pants spy thriller? You've got Cap 2 Winter Soldier. It's freaking awesome, right? Do you want a techno thing? Check out Iron Man 3. Do you want high fantasy and your sci-fi? There's your Thors 2 and 3 right there that just blow that concept out of the water and just do it great. This show was. Did people forget that we had Westworld seasons 1 and 2 that slow burn this thing, and it was genius. That's what they took. That's the genre they're playing with here. The references to the Twilight Zone. I mean, this was slow burn Twilight Zone episode, just amazingness, and I'm totally cool with anybody who didn't like it, because I think you should have permission not to like things. And I think the Marvel movies and TV shows have something for everybody to have. This is my comfort food, right?
Right.
But man, if you want a challenging, interesting mystery TV, it was wonderful.
I mean,
I was going to say that.
I was going to say for people who are fans of like Twin Peaks and Twilight Zone and any of those, I love those shows. So I didn't get to answer that last question that you asked, but I was just going to say this left me so excited for the next, what's coming after it. I mean, just those two, the mid-credit and the end credit scene, I'm very excited about what's coming next. That's how I left the last episode.
Yeah, going back to what Chris was saying, a friend of mine apparently was like carrying on to her about how there should have been a first episode that explained it all. And we were both like, but that's the whole point of the series. It's a mystery. And I was thinking, well, like you got Columbo, the Columbo series, for those who've never seen it. I mean, that always showed how it was a whodunit, but it was always, you saw who did it and how they did to start with. And then the whole mystery was, how does Columbo figure out what they did, when they did it, and why they did it? But this is not Columbo. This was like a really good, slow burning mystery with a lot of it was like peeling back an onion. You really did not know what you were getting. And to have something setting up and showing all the stuff that we got in the last 2 episodes, in the first episode, why would anybody want to watch after that? I mean, okay, so she went crazy and she did this, so where do we go from here? So that's not what the show is about. And I agree with Nate also. I mean, it's the same thing, because Chris and I are both Doctor Who fans. Like, there's always a period where you're going to like it, and there's usually a period where you're not going to like it, and it's always okay. Love what makes you happy. Don't love what doesn't make you happy, but allow other people to like or dislike what they are without saying, you're an idiot because you like this, or you're an idiot because you didn't like that. Just love what you love.
I mean, other than the fact that we can agree that Martha was the greatest companion of all time, there's no question about that. But everything else is.
I wrote a poem about that. in iambic pentameter. So yes.
Oh,
I
man.
think we could have a whole other panel about that later.
That's a whole other panel.
About how you're wrong.
What's
Whoa.
interesting.
The whole Agatha was right all along. We would not have been leaping off our couches
Oh,
at that moment of awesome TV if they'd said in the first 30 minutes of episode 1, here was happening. I'm by the way, I'm agreeing with I will agree with the chat. By the way, Dr. Donna is fantastic.
I love Donna. I
But-
cosplay Donna, but
Yeah, but the show gave us. Oh, Bill, y'all are killing me, Crystal, with Bill. Yes, Bill
all
was-
of the above.
Right.
Yeah.
Anybody
y'all-
but Rose, and I'll that's a hill I'll
Sorry,
fight.
sorry, different panel, different panel.
hey, we already have a topic for the next panel.
Yeah.
You know,
Why
with,
Bill was wronged.
Oh.
You know, just like you didn't want to have a first episode that explained everything, as Jarvis said earlier, I mean, imagine if they had dropped this show all at once. Like, I don't think it would have been as interesting or generated as much pop culture discussion.
Buzz.
The fact that Agatha all along became a pop sensation, like in a week, was amazing.
Right, number 1 on iTunes, I think, within like 24
Crazy.
hours of it.
And all these
dropping.
remixes and people doing TikTok videos is just
My college buddy text chain was nothing but WandaVision discussion for 6 straight days. And then we all had an agreement we wouldn't talk about it until Saturday at noon so that everyone had a chance to watch it, and it would start all over again.
Yeah.
You would never have gotten that with it been dropped all at once.
Well, I think the other problem, you know, with everything dropping all at once, and, you know, I'm showing my age too, is that it's just exhausting. Like, I can't watch 10 hours of TV, binge watching it in 10 hours straight. I need to stop and take a break. And meanwhile, everybody else has been done and gone and moved on to the next thing. And this actually, it drew it out because, and it allowed people to like catch up and talk and have these discussions. I'm in it's sort of a PM group of other people who are, they're sharing memes and they're asking questions, and we're kind of like joking about this, that, or the other thing. And it's really nice to be able to like just sit back and take a breath and have something to talk about for an entire week. The same thing with Mandalorian. I think the fact that Disney is doing this with their series, you know, and doing it weekly instead of giving us, you know, 10 hours at once or 5 hours at once or whatever we're getting is it's just genius. Like I said, aside from the subscription thing, which is great for them, it's really good as an audience because there's so many things to watch and so many things to pay attention to that I can't keep up with. But this at least is something that's kind of slowly rolling out, so you can actually catch up with it and watch one episode and talk and not be like, oh my God, you're like 3 seasons in already and I have no idea where you're going, and oh, thanks for spoiling this, that, and the other thing. So.
Right. All right, well, we're getting near the end of the panel. I want to ask, you know, where do we think WandaVision go from here, and where does the greater MCU story go from here? Any speculation, thoughts, ideas?
Well, obviously we know that Wanda's showing up in Multiverse of Madness, so whether she's going to be an antagonist or protagonist with Doctor Strange is yet to be seen. But I think they've kicked the door wide open for the mystical Marvel, the way Guardians of the Galaxy did with Cosmic Marvel, and then, you know, later with Captain Marvel too. We're getting a whole other. I mean, Doc Strange sort of did it, but he had his one movie, which was great. But then the next time we saw him was Infinity War. So we really haven't dealt with the magical side of Marvel yet, which is very big and vast and fascinating too. So I think that's going to start rolling, and we'll see where this goes, whether we're going to get other, you know, mystical, whether we're going to be dealing with the whole demonology, etc. We're getting Moon Knight and we're getting Blade, which are both supernatural shows. So I think it's going to connect to that somehow. And hopefully we'll get Ghost Rider and some of the other guys there. So the Marvel universe, it keeps expanding, it's rippling out. And Vision is going to show up. I'm wondering if he's going to show up in something like Armor Wars, which is coming up, which is it's going to be Rhodey, and we don't know who else is in the series yet, but that's more the tech, you know, mecha side of things. So he's going to have to hook up with like other Avengers at some point too. But where he lands and who he's working with, we don't know yet.
I'm also curious to see what's going to happen with Nick Fury and his series that's coming out, because there kind of been theories that Monica's going to see him, obviously, after the mid-credit scene, that whether or not that's going to be involved in Captain Marvel 2 or whether it's going to be involved in the Nick Fury series. So I'll be interested to see what happens with those.
Well,
I think within, in terms of Wanda and Vision, there's going to be some toying around with the estrangement of them now that he's, that's not the exact version that she had. So they're going to play around with that a little bit. And in terms of the whole universe, just looking at that graphic with 12 to 20 different shows coming out over the next few years, just has me as a comic book fan, seeing all of these comics as a kid on the screen. I'm just ecstatic right now. And so I'm excited about the direction they're going with stuff, because after watching WandaVision, you have no clue of what they're going to do. You can try to speculate, but it's not going to do you any good.
I got to be honest, I have no idea where MCU can go, because they're doing the freaking Eternals, and I have no idea how they can possibly fit that in to what they've already done, but I'm going to roll with it. I've got one hope for the MCU going forward, and that is more Agatha. I want Agatha and everything. I want the Jack Kirby version, that was a thinly veiled Mary Poppins, who is inhabiting the Marvel Universe and is being the nanny to all the mystical children out there and mentoring them.
So wait, she's going to be like Missy?
There's textual evidence that that was Jack Kirby's original. Jack Kirby's original clue in was she was really Mary Poppins, and that's why she was made the nanny of Reed Richards' child, who needed to learn how to use his powers, and then later mentors other children and Wanda and all that stuff. I want that. I want her get redeemed into that. That's my only hope.
That could be fun. That could be fun.
More Darcy and more Jimmy Woo.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think if that wasn't in the plan before, I certainly think that's going to be in the plan now. I'm sure somebody's definitely taking notes about how well that went, and trying to figure out if it wasn't in there before, how to fit them into other shows or films. So.
Yeah, it's obvious based on what I'm reading in interviews and stuff that Marvel is well aware of what is going on social media. They see the memes, they see the TikToks. They're taking stock of every comic, good, bad, or indifferent, that the fans are talking about. I'm sure they're lurking on Reddit, 4chan or wherever, and they're taking notes. And yeah, I think they know if they see somebody who's popular and they're working, they're gonna add them too. They're trying to get more people to watch, not turn people off by doing this, that, or the other. But I think on the other hand, Feige has a plan. Feige knows what he wants to do. He's not, which is good. He's not listening to the fandom and giving them exactly what they say they want, because that's not what they want. If you give them that, fans tend to then be like, oh, I hate this. But you can't let the fans drive your creative visions of things. And I like the fact that Nate said earlier that they're playing with genres, they're playing with time periods. Like Ant-Man is one of my favorite. The original Ant-Man is one of my favorite films because it's small, and it's basically a 1960s heist. So in the vein of like Ocean's 11 or whatever. So they're finding different ways. Falcon and Winter Soldier, obviously, like the buddy, like the 90s, whether it's Lethal Weapon or 48 Hours or that kind of thing, is that kind of a buddy film. So they're playing with genres and not just giving you the same superhero, this act, that. And I see people saying that they are, and I don't understand it, because if you actually pay attention to the details of every single thing, you can tell the genre, but it's not just that. You're not getting just a Lethal Weapon ripoff or whatever, or 3 Days of the Condor, or All the President's Men in Winter Soldier, which is also, that's one of their best films. So we're in for, we don't even know what we're in for, because
Nope.
And that's exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
It
It's
really
so
is.
exciting.
It really is.
I know before we turned on the camera and went live, we were talking a little bit about Falcon and Winter Soldier. And do you have any particular, Jan kind of outlined her hopes or expectations, but do we have any particular hopes or expectations for that show? That's coming up fast.
I've got one. We've already said it. I want Zemo. He was not. We did not get it. We have not gotten enough Zemo. We need more Zemo. We need Thunderbolt. We need Zemo turning into Thunderbolts.
Well,
he is an awesome Nazi villain. We need him. He's so evil. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, as I said, we've got Ross showing up again in Winter Soldier and Falcon and Winter Soldier. So, and I think he's also in Black Widow if we ever get that film. So I think they're building towards Thunderbolts also. I mean, there's like a lot of seeds that if you know the comics, you can sort of say, okay, you can see these characters starting to like go in that direction. So I'm hoping for that too. I just want a good buddy thing, and blowing things up and two guys basically snarking at each other all the time.
And maybe kissing.
That's okay too. You know, I love Sebastian Stan. He can kiss anybody he wants.
I'm looking forward to seeing it just because it's more MCU. And like I said, after WandaVision, we haven't a clue of what we're going to see. But one thing we do know is it's definitely going to be entertaining.
Definitely action packed.
Yeah. Well, we do know one person who knows, and that's Jan's friend, who doesn't want to
Yes.
spill the beans. But you know, other than that,
Spill the beans.
Well, the funny thing is he worked on WandaVision, but he didn't actually know it because I think he only saw the script for the episodes he worked on.
Yeah.
So he was watching the show along with us and had no idea what was happening. Why is my hand up? I did
Nice.
not.
I don't know.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. We're now at over an hour. Hopefully, everybody enjoyed the chat. Any final thoughts anybody has before we sign off? Any other thoughts about WandaVision, MCU, anything like that?
Thank you for doing this. This is fun.
This is fun. I hope we get to do it again.
Yes.
I miss cons terribly, so the fact that I can actually do a panel, even if it's virtually, is a wonderful thing. So.
Oh man. Well, that's
This
why
has been This has been really fun, and I'm really privileged to be on here with you guys tonight.
It's so nice to meet everybody too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for being here.
And just as an aside, I just saw my friend Nancy saying she can't wait for Loki. All I can
Me
say is
too.
yes, we know. Yes, I'm really excited for Loki. It just looks like it's going to be absolutely insane.
I mean, but that really is, as we were just saying. I mean, everybody's excited for something that's coming up. You know, even if a Loki's not your thing, maybe there's another thing that's your thing. So
Yeah.
I mean, they're really smart about having that variety in there that kind of gives everybody something that they will love.
Or there are those of us who are excited about everything.
Same. But also the last thing I was going to say is also not only are they giving everybody a little bit of something, the fact that they're being diverse and they're really pushing diversity both in front of the camera and behind the camera. It's just the fact that Captain Marvel has got the first Black director, the fact that Eternals is the first Asian American woman director in Marvel. I mean, the fact that they're really playing with that too and trying to make it not just your normal little pigeonhole of white male fans is great, because that's the only way the MCU is going to survive. Is we've got to bring in everybody.
Well, it's the only way entertainment in general is going to survive, really.
Exactly.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if you don't start bringing in all kinds of voices, why are you doing it, really? I mean, what you got to do that.
That's actually a whole other panel that I think we could really, especially in science fiction, fantasy genre.
I'm writing that one down. I'll write that one down. We'll do that one sometime. But,
all right.
In the meanwhile, I want to say thank you to the panel. Jan, Nate,
Thank
Adrienne,
you.
Jarvis, thank you. And thank you to Nat for being the god behind the scenes to make it all happen. And thanks to Roberson Museum. Keep an eye on the Roberson Facebook page and the RoberCon Facebook page about what we will do next. We got some workshops and things planned. I don't know what panel we'll do next, but we'll think of something for next month maybe, because this seemed to have a pretty good turnout. Thank you for everybody for showing up. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again out there soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care.
All right. Take care.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep. You too.